Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Purpose Up podcast. Today, I am very excited to have returning guests, David Dachinger and Tamara. Oh my gosh, Tamara Green. How are you guys doing?
Doing
We're good, Ben.
great.
It's great to see you again.
Doing great.
I received coaching on how to say their names just about 5 seconds ago, and I fumbled it. But we're gonna work through this. So super excited to have you guys back, and we're going to talk about loving meditations. We are going to talk about how you guys are showing up in the world now during, quote, these times of the great pandemic, the great shutdown, and how folks can really shift their beingness and the conversation in their head. So I'm super excited to dive into that. I know we covered your guys' story in the first round, so let's start with the lightning round version of who you guys are and how you guys got into loving meditation for those folks that are not familiar, and then we'll dive into some of this other stuff.
Sure. And I think in a way, this could really relate to what everyone's going through. Our personal journey in 2013 started with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis for me. And so it's equivalent in the sense that I was numb when I heard the news. It just really did not totally sink in. My mind was somewhere else. My life became chaos instantly. So things like that are happening now, like couldn't work out, couldn't really do much physical activity. And so I was spending a lot of time either at the hospital or home. Tamara was my loving and amazing caregiver during that time. And it probably took 2 weeks for us to kind of come back down to earth from the intensity of this life change, the epic, complete reboot of our lives. And once that dust settled, we were able to slowly reincorporate tools that had worked for us in the past to make us more present, more grounded, and to kind of shift off of the fear and the victim mentality and more onto what can I control in my own personal experience? What is available to me? What's the gift in this? So it was a journey of 6 months, about 6 months to the end of treatment. During that time, I think we really went from the bottom of the muck to finding a whole new place, a whole new outlook, and for me, reinventing myself to a certain extent.
Our new normal.
All right. And then so out of that experience, you guys then created loving meditations to help support folks and help them find their own resourcefulness and give them some tools in dealing with that roller coaster of emotions that you went through. So frame that journey up a little bit for us.
Sure. It was a interesting moment when David's oncologist told us, and I was in the room, in the office, doctor's office with him, when he said, well, you are cancer free. And he said, oh my goodness, David, you went through brutal treatment. You were both always so calm, so optimistic. What were you guys doing? You guys were doing something different, because that's not usually what I expect from somebody with your kind of cancer and your kind of treatment. So David told him, well, we've been doing, meditation and gratitude and body movement and listening to uplifting positive audio, that sort of thing. And he goes, well, I want that for all of my patients. They need to calm down like you guys were so calm. And what a great outcome it's been. And David and I looked at each other right in that moment and said, ooh, that's it.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, 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 light bulb, light bulb, light bulb. And Loving Meditations was born. We wanted to pay it forward. We've been through the experience. We have collaborated together, creating meditation for our YouTube channel for the 7 prior years. And so we decided, let's make something specifically for those touched by cancer, for patients, caregivers, survivors, and even healthcare providers too. So out came our app, and then we wrote a book together from the patient perspective, the caregiver perspective. We also have waiting room TV for hospitals, doctors' offices, because very stressful. Waiting rooms are very stressful. So we have a beautiful calming program for the waiting room as well, plus other things, but that's kind of how it got started.
Nice. I love it. And you know, I'm a big meditator. I love meditating, so I can just kind of imagine the benefits that come when someone who's struck with that type of news, when you give them these tools, how beneficial it can be. So let's talk about how the benefits of someone given a diagnosis like cancer is similar and different from folks who are dealing with kind of like the grief, anxiety, and stress during this time of the coronavirus. What are those parallels? How are they different? And then then we'll transition into talking about some of those tools.
Great question. And so as I touched on, life shifted completely, including not being able to perform normal activities. And so to some extent, it also created a ton of downtime, which quite a few people are experiencing. And so that's the time when I started thinking, well, I'm sitting in this infusion chair for 8 hours. I'm not going to watch TV the whole time. What can I do that's going to actually be uplifting or positive or something that's going to benefit me? So I started using that time to listen to clearing statements, to listen to meditations, to just to actually get up and see other people in the rooms there that were also cancer patients, and start to kind of engage in a kind of a loving kindness practice, to be kind, supportive of them, kind of get out of my own victimhood, my own sense of why is this happening to me. And I found that the more compassionate I became and the more I could focus on other people and being helpful and loving towards them, that it totally shifted me out of that negativity and put me into a better place.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful point that I want to highlight, is that you choosing positive ways to spend your time, and then B, one of those being focusing outward, and just tying it into Purpose Up and the purpose journey. I think there's so much magic that can happen when we do focus outward. Like you said, we get out of a victim mentality, and it unlocks all those doors for us. So I think it's amazing you had that shift, and it's a great takeaway for the audience.
Absolutely.
So, and then to clarify, what is a clearing statement for those folks that may not know what that is?
Sure. Well, there's an organization called Access Consciousness, who are run by some pretty brilliant and innovative men. And basically, one of their main tools is called a clearing statement. It's a bunch of words that in and of themselves probably don't make a whole lot of sense, but we're basically taking something we want to change and kind of make the energy around it dissolve and disperse. And by using the clearing statements, like for example, I had to, the radiation I was getting for treatment was really, really bad for teeth and gums. Like, it has a really detrimental effect. So I would actually sit in a bathtub full of Epsom salts, kind of detox after chemo and radiation, and listen to clearing statements for teeth and gums, kind of encouraging the growth of those parts of my body. And so that's an example of what a clearing statement can do, but it could be around a behavior, a belief, some part of our everyday existence that doesn't work for us, doesn't serve, and we can just kind of start to change the energy around it.
Gotcha. And is this something that you are recording and then listening to, or does one just go to a certain library and just pull out the gum and teeth clearing statements?
Yeah, well, it works all those ways. You can, particular ones for gums and teeth was a guy who's a dentist, and he created the clearing statement. So I would listen to his in a loop.
Tom Happy Mouth.
Yeah.
Happy Mouth.
Dr. Tom.
Dr. Tom Happy Mouth. Just go to the internet and you'll find him.
But you can also create your own and loop them. You can say them out loud, trade them back and forth with your friend or partner, and then they're available in other different forms from Access Consciousness.
So an example, just to give you an example, Ben, everything that doesn't allow my gums and teeth to come back to perfect health, everything that is, I now clear that, and the weird statement is right, wrong, good, bad, POD and POC, all nine shorts, points, and beyond. And it's kind of like an acronym for just everything you can imagine that would, stop your gums and teeth from regenerating perfectly healthy gums and teeth. You're basically clearing everything else out. So that's giving you a little example. Sounds weird, but I don't know, there's something to it.
And it's really out there for any situation that that you've got some stuck energy, or just kind of into an area where you're feeling like you're stuck and you want to kind of move forward out of it.
So just to kind of bring that up to today, do you guys have any clearing statements, or how would we approach that for where we're at now with anxiety, stress, et cetera?
Yeah, the kind of questions that I ask myself are, what am I refusing to choose right now that if I did choose it would actually bring me some peace? And everything that is, am I willing to, I want to make sure I'm saying that right. Everything that is, am I willing to just let that go, dissolve it? And I'm always like, yeah, I always answer my own question. Yeah, sure. And then that weird clearing statement, or just even asking the question begins a clearing. So I want to explain it a little bit so people really get what we're talking about here. So there's a moment when a thought, a belief, a feeling, emotion, whatever, there's a moment, usually pretty far back in our childhood, when we this massive energy come together and form the creation of that belief or that thought or that trauma or the emotion as a result, right? So when you, what you're doing with these crazy questions and state clearing statements is you're going right back to that moment when it started, probably years and years ago, and you're going right there to the what's called the point of creation, to then go to the point of destruction. You got to kind of, you don't have to, but you got to go. I mean, it helps to go there to then say, okay, yeah, I release that and let that go. And that's part of what that weird clearing statement is all about. Another one might be, what am I not receiving that if I would receive it would actually change everything or give me peace right here in this moment? And everything that is, am I willing to let go of anything that's not allowing that peace?
Right. I love it. I love it. And the metaphor that came up to my mind when you were talking about that, those points of when we form beliefs and energy forms around that, and then we kind of run our thought loops through that. It's like a thinking about like a pressure point in our back or shoulder that, when you rub on it, you can kind of release it so it doesn't have that same tight over you.
Yes.
So that metaphor came up for me. And I also love asking that question of, what is it that I get to release to kind of give me what I want right now? So you are focusing on that thing about what you want and letting everything else go.
That's it.
Yeah. And this could also relate to our sense of catastrophe that we're all experiencing right now in different degrees. And the fear of loss, the fear of suffering, the fear of illness and death and all of that. But ultimately, all these tools that we're using are bringing us back to the present moment, because when we're thinking about the future and the catastrophe that could happen, or something that hasn't actually happened yet, but we're projecting that we're afraid of it happening, we're not in the present moment. And that's taken us out of our centeredness. It's taken us out of our source. And one other piece that kind of relates back to the cancer treatment is some people are having to go through this in a very isolated way, whether they're in the hospital or at home. And ultimately, the real source of our own joy and happiness and centeredness is something we take and carry with us all the time. It's not going to come from the outside. It's really got to come from within. So we're trying to access some of these, we're trying to access that joy and happiness and the source part of us, to be in that moment rather than being out there kind of in the fear, worry, anxiety, and uncertainty.
You mean I'm not gonna get my joy and my fulfillment from my next Amazon package? That's what
Well, I don't know. I think we'll give it that some credit. I just got one myself, and it was very exciting.
It's a big one.
So, I mean, I think there's like, I 100% agree that being present is super important. And, I even had this experience yesterday is I was present and, I had this emotion, that, I just felt sad, in my system. And, the label I put on it was kind of sadness or grief. And, I tried to attach it to, maybe my 2-year-old not being able to hang out with his friends at the park, or his way changing, and I'm sure part of that was sadness for me too. How do we reconcile feeling feelings and being present with them? Because sometimes it's like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, I should be grateful. So how do we do that dance of honoring our emotions and feeling them and staying present?
Yeah, I love this question. And you actually already did, kind of part one of that answer, which is you labeled your feelings. That's really, so feelings and emotions, they want motion, emotion, right? They want to move, and they're trying to, they're coming up to the surface so that they can actually leave. Now, what pushes it back down is when you're having some judgment or you're creating some meaning around it. So, maybe when you say, oh, no, it's because of my 2-year-old and I can't play, then that probably let it stay there a little bit longer. But as soon as you say, thank you, sadness, thank you, grief, for, showing now that you're going to leave my system, thank you for all you've done for me, now goodbye. Because it's an interesting thing about feelings and emotions, maybe even beliefs, that they're actually, and I'm talking from my psychotherapy training here, they're actually a protective mechanism. They're trying to protect us from the deepest, scariest, trauma, sad, feelings we could ever feel, so at least if we're kind of focused on maybe creating meaning or whatever, that takes us away from that deep core, point of creation kind of wound, let's say. So thank you for trying to protect me, but bye, off you go. Writing it, saying it out loud, saying it to yourself, labeling it. Yeah, those are all very helpful. The next step is what I just said, just, thanking, going from fear, which is sadness, depression, overwhelm, all that stuff. That's fear. The root of that, the energy of that is fear. And then moving that into love, which is thank you. I'm grateful. Thank you. Thank you for trying to protect me. Really appreciate that. Goodbye. Right? So that would be the next step. So what you're doing is, especially in this time of global crisis, again, it's like what David was talking about, coming right back to that present moment. And you can always find something that you're grateful for. Replace the fear with some kind of love energy, gratitude, appreciation, curiosity, understanding, compassion, all those things, right? And then you switch right up, because there's no way, there's no way you can really feel both of those things at the exact same time. Fear and love energy at exactly the same time. It may be switching back and forth a little bit, but yeah.
And so I guess the question comes up for me as a follow-up to that, and thank you for that explanation. That was clear. Sometimes people are like, honor your emotions, and maybe you're doing that by thanking them. Is there ever the risk of dismissing emotions or not really processing them if we are constantly pivoting into thank you? So is there any potential that we're not being with our emotions enough?
Well, I hear this from my newer clients all the time. I'm trying to be grateful. I'm trying this. I'm trying to have a smile on my face and focus on the positive. I'm like, well, why? You've got all these feelings in here that are trying to surface. It's really important to focus on that first before you can even get to gratitude, So I think that's the only way, is if you're trying to shove it down and ignore, right? And all it's trying to do is leave. So it really is important to go ahead and just, feel it fully, feel what it feels like. This is what I do with my clients. Feel what it feels like to be really sad or in grief right now. Feel it. Where's it landing in your body? Okay, good. Now, thank you. You're allowing it to happen. You're not shoving it down. And then, thanks for all you've done. Goodbye.
All right.
And something that Tamara just touched on, which I think is universal, is that a lot of what's going on for us is all up here in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can start to tune back into our bodies and maybe locate where a feeling is coming from, or pain or discomfort, we're now reuniting the mind and the body. And again, it's enabling that emotion to start to move out or move forward or move in a different direction. We have to we have to integrate the mind and the body more, because it's easy for us to always be up here in the head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. It reminds me of some closed eye sessions I've done with some coaches. I think this particular one was called RIM, where you imagine whatever pain you have in your body, and then you go into it and you like describe what it feels like to be inside of it, and then kind of talk about if it's moving, if it's stationary, and what color is it, and then allow yourself to kind of explore it from that mind and body perspective, to then kind of probably unlock those points that you were talking about a bit. And that work is definitely powerful for helping surface up some of that stuff.
Yep. One of the meditations that we have on our app is body awareness. That's what it's called, right? Body awareness, where you're going right there, right? And doing exactly what you're talking about until it releases. And it's pretty amazing that it does release. I'd also love, if we have time, Ben, I'd love to share another exercise that's really powerfully effective. And we call it one of our 1 minute to calm techniques that really, really helps. And whether it's sadness or physical pain, emotional pain, it's just pretty powerful and super easy. Anyone can do it. And unless you can't breathe. If you can't breathe, then you're going to have a hard time.
Well, I took my allergy pill right before, so I think the airwaves are moving. So let's go for it.
Okay, so what I'd like you to do is, if you're sitting, feet flat on the floor, and sit in a way that you really allow yourself to relax completely. You can either relax or close your eyes altogether. And if you're standing, that's fine too. I don't recommend you do this if you're driving or operating a huge tractor or something like that. But I want you to go ahead and breathe in and allow whatever that fear is, that emotion, that pain, physical, whatever, just go ahead and pay attention to it. So breathe in, pay attention, feel it fully. Exhale, and like a smoke ring, create space around that pain, that emotional or physical pain. Breathe in, allow yourself to go back to that pain, emotional or physical pain. Exhale, create even more space around that emotional or physical pain. Inhale, feel that pain fully, all the way. Exhale, even more space around that pain. Breathe in and feel whatever's left of that pain. Exhale, even more space, larger space around that shrinking pain. and last deep breath. You're getting very present with whatever's left. Exhale even more space, and that space just keeps getting bigger and expanding out even more, even after we're done with this little technique. And when you're ready, just open your eyes, come back into the room. And what was that like for you, Ben?
It was beautiful. Similar to yesterday, there was still some residual sadness there, and I was, honestly, like feeling it through my sinuses a bit, and could feel that kind of almost wanting to cry feeling dissipate, as we went through it.
Yeah, wonderful. And I've done this type of thing for much longer than a minute, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. And then you move into compassion for yourself for having felt this pain. Then you start, and you can do this in this time for sure, you start sending that compassion to everyone else who's feeling this feeling of fear or pain or whatever it may be. And you're kind of sending that out like waves, like an ocean wave around the globe. And it's very powerful.
I can see how powerful that is. Compassion is super important, and I want to touch on that for a second, especially self-compassion. I think many folks know what it's like to be compassionate to somebody else. How would you describe how to practice self-compassion for folks, and what that looks like?
I think people need to realize I think they know it, but they need to acknowledge how hard it is to be a freaking human being. It is so hard. So I even wake up in the morning and I say, Tamara, good for you. You actually got your feet out of the bed and you're actually willing to get up and brush your teeth, take a shower, and do a whole nother day of this. Yay me, right? So that's kind of I usually end up giggling to myself. That's what happens when I'm having these thoughts. But, compliment yourself, which is another form of compassion, but compliment yourself, acknowledge yourself for all you're going through, which is a lot. Just being born into this world is kind of a challenge, right? So we need to acknowledge how difficult it is, and then move into, usually it helps if it's like you said, Ben, it's easier to have compassion for others. So start there. Start with having compassion for, those first responders, like my husband, and the nurses and doctors and police officers and firefighters and the delivery, restaurant delivery people, and all of them, right? They're out there, in spite of what's going on. Have compassion for them. But then you're starting to feel this energy of compassion. Now turn it inwards and say, you know what about me and all the stuff I'm going through? The thing I was talking about in the beginning are those core wounds. Most of those core wounds, 95, if not 99% of all of our real traumas happen by the time we're 5 and younger. So what about having compassion for that little one inside that's been carrying all this fear and sadness and grief and trauma and upset, or even physical pain, right? Why not go ahead and give some to that one inside that's feeling so much hurt and pain?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. And I think similar to what you've said, I've heard it described as, adult you visiting with that 5-year-old you in your head and telling them what they need to hear, whether it's, cheering them on in the morning, or, letting them know that they're loved and that they're safe, and really just appreciating them for being them, and thinking about how you would talk to a 5-year-old, because, I'm sure as you deal with lots of your clients, and that so much of our self-talk can be self-bullying. But if we imagine, what is that little child need to hear, like, that's kind of helps me understand self-compassion in a powerful way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you mind if I just share one more thing to even get a whole nother level of understanding is that,
let's take it to the next level.
yeah, let's take it to the, I think David was starting to talk about or was touching on this, that I call it, you're either in conditional living or unconditional living. So conditional living is what a lot of people are experiencing now. Like they have that loss of safety or, certainty, and there's no such thing as certainty, really. I mean, when it gets right down to it, but things have to be just so in order for me to feel okay. That's conditional living, right? Well, now this is a perfect opportunity. Now we're in a perfect opportunity for really exploring unconditional living. So in other words, it doesn't matter what's going on around me. Nothing's going to shake the center of my peace. And when you're talking to that little one inside, which is kind of ruling our behaviors, our thoughts, our negativity, that little one is kind of in charge most of the time, unfortunately. But when we can actually give that little one some attention and say, I'm completely devoted to you. You're my number one priority relationship in my life. I love you. I'm here for you. I'm not going to beat you up anymore. I'm going to say very nice and kind, loving things to you. What you're doing is starting to become much more unconditional. So it doesn't matter what's going on around you. You still are able to stay steady and strong within yourself and not have to look outside yourself for, that peace. Now, of course, it's so nice to have comfort and touch and hugs. Of course, we're human, but it doesn't rock your world, and take you off kilter when all these terrible things are happening around us.
Yeah, I think that's, I haven't heard that perspective said in that way. So that's, I definitely like the way that you shared that. So what else haven't we talked about that would be useful for people to know? We've talked about presence. We've talked about clearing statements. We did the breathing exercise, talked about self-compassion. What are other things that we can do to maybe deal with that fear and anxiety? I mean, you actually touched on like the delivery people and the fear there. And, how do we get past the fear of that little 5-year-old in us not wanting to touch anybody and stay away from people and remember that we're all human and in this together, especially when we've been conditioned to be so isolated, and now that's being like reinforced by the circumstances of social distancing or physical distancing. Is there anything else that we can do to further integrate all of this?
Yeah, one thought is to kind of develop your own set of mantras, just little phrases that help you through these types of situations. I know for me, one that's always helped is "this too shall pass." As change is the constant of the universe and the world and humanity, we know from looking at history and just seeing what's going on today, there's no guarantee, there's no certainty, there's no security. Change is the only constant. So we know that what's here today is going to show up differently tomorrow and 2 weeks from now and a year from now. So for me, it's very comforting to just go back to "this too shall pass." And if I find myself in a moment where there's nothing really adverse happening to me, I can say all is well. And that helps me sometimes when I'm having trouble falling asleep. I know in that moment I'm in my bed, I'm safe, I'm secure, and I have no dire problem in that moment. I can say all is well. And for some people, it's prayer. Turn to the prayers that comfort you and that give you peace in any situation. That's a very powerful technique as well.
Yes, I think, like mantras, those are probably another way of saying like affirmations. One thing I just I produce like a little animation, and I'll sing it here real quick because it's kind of fun. But this speech therapist in Australia shared a song that was "Every little cell in my body is happy, every little cell in my body is well." And then the next verse is, "I'm so glad every little cell in my body is happy and well." So you can repeat that, but I made like a little animation to go with it. I commissioned somebody off of Fiverr to kind of show a little red blood cell and white cell dancing. But I think, like you're saying, repeating those things that make us feel safe and secure. A, the repetition helps us, and B, that moving that into our belief system is super helpful. So I love that.
Yeah, we have another wonderful meditation on our app called All Is Well, right?
Yeah.
And it's all about life growth. Each one of our cells really has quite a bit of life, and it just wants to continue to grow and not die, but grow. So if we focus on that amazing energy of life growth instead of, life death, you really are helping to regenerate, the healthy cells and immunity. I guess that's the other thing that with your question that I thought of was stress lowers your immunity. So now is a perfect opportunity to do all those practices that you need to be doing. You've been saying this to yourself for years. So go ahead and really devote some time to this. It's time for all of us to really create those practices in our life, which turn all that, negative trauma and fear into a better future for yourself, because that's what a practice will do. It'll create such a nicer future for yourself and everyone else.
All right. I think that's a beautiful segue to start to land the plane. Is there anything else that we haven't discussed that, you want listeners or viewers to walk away with?
We've started creating our 1 Minute to Calm series specifically to address some anxiety, uncertainty, fear, grief, and loss around the coronavirus. It's on our YouTube channel, which is Loving Meditations TV, and it's also free on our app, which is you can find at lovingmeditations.com. And we're going to continue to carry on creating those pieces, short little bite-sized techniques that you can carry with you and use out there in the world during these challenging times.
All right. Beautiful. Well, I appreciate you guys making those available to the world and supporting a more present, compassionate energy out there so we can all raise our vibration. So thank you guys for the good work that you guys do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ben. It's a pleasure to talk to you today. That was a great conversation.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thanks, Ben.
All right. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.